I think. Okay. So welcome everybody, including the alumni, to the Spring 2024 Alumni Panel. We have some great folks tonight. I'm gonna go around and ask them each some questions to get them started talking about their lives since Eastern, what they're doing, and kind of how they got there a little bit. I'm just gonna, at the moment, ask the alums to introduce themselves and just very briefly, because I'll be asking you more about the specifics of what you're doing a bit as we go along. But just really quickly, if you could just say your name, what year you graduated from Eastern, and just kind of your job title or what it is really briefly that you're doing now. Okay, so I'm gonna start. So you guys are the alums should unmute. Um, all right, so I'm just gonna start with the who's in my upper left corner and go clockwise. So Max Chase, you're first.
Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I graduated from Eastern in 2021, and I work in business management for Enterprise Mobility, who's the parent company for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, who people may be familiar with.
Okay, excellent. Thanks. Kat is next.
Hello, everyone. Kat Allegretti. I graduated in 2017, which, spoiler, there's another person on this panel that did as well. I currently lead employee and executive communications for engineering and technology at RTX. So that's 65,000 engineers spanning across 3 businesses.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Kyle.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kyle, and I'm the spoiler alert because I also graduated back in 2017, and I am currently a data solutions specialist with the University of New Haven, handling everything in the IT department for all their databases.
Excellent, great, thanks. And Safia.
Hi, I'm Safia Palmer. I graduated December 21, but I walked to May 22 because there was no December commencement. I'm currently a graduate assistant at the University of South Florida, so I'm both a student and an instructor.
Okay, excellent. And you're in, just to tell people, you're in the MFA in writing program there, right?
Yes.
What's your specialty? What do you write?
So I was admitted for fiction, but I did apply for both fiction and poetry, and at my school we can do multiple.
Oh, cool. That's great. Okay. Um, so just to get started, to start us off, again, I'm just going to go around how I see you and ask you. So I would like each of you to sort of briefly describe your path since graduation from Eastern. So as far as you can remember, as best as you can, what are the steps that got you from graduation day to where you are now? Max, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to preface, I'm super into cars. So that's pretty much driven every decision that I've made after school. So when I graduated from Eastern, I worked for Volkswagen, and I did electric vehicle marketing and sales for VW for a little while. And then I made the transition probably about a year and a half, 2 years after I graduated from Eastern. I moved over to work for Enterprise, where I work now. And I worked in management for the rental division, and then I worked briefly for our sales division. And I just made the move back to the rental management division because I just moved to a different to Rhode Island. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I've just been following, doing some sales and management roles and everything, and I'll talk a little bit later about how all the English degree stuff has factored into that because it has heavily.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Kat.
Yeah, and I think I'll talk a little bit about during, because where I work now is actually where I worked all throughout my time at Eastern as well. So when I'm in communication, so when I started at Eastern, I was getting a double major in English and Spanish, and I sort of just applied for this internship on a whim. They needed strong writers, and were having trouble finding them, and submitted a writing sample, started working for the company. It's aerospace, and that was pretty cool to me, and I've been working for them since. So when I graduated, I held a role as a co-op, and then have since kind of transitioned from a specialist that was really focused on one site communications in Connecticut to now, I'm part of the RTX corporate team and have a much larger breadth and scope of work. I also got my master's at Central Connecticut State University just right after I graduated. I love school and I was like, yes. And I got that in strategic communications. So.
Excellent. Thank you. Kyle, what about you?
So I was a little bit of a scatterplot graph all over the place. I jumped from job to job depending on what was going on. I've had experience working with an HVAC company, Yale University Press for a summer, Medtronic, which is the world's largest medical corporation, for half a year. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and I was like the first to let go because I was a temporary employee there. And then, 2 years at Costco during the pandemic, and now I'm at University of New Haven. But with all the, it's been great. There's a lot of stuff I learned at each and every single one, and it's helped me develop better as a person each time too.
Right. Yeah. And that's actually a pretty common, I mean, it's not an uncommon path because a lot of times English majors don't really know what they want to do when when they first graduate and they sort of fall into things. Safia, what about you?
So when I graduated, I did a couple of random jobs, but they were all office related. They were temp positions, so that's why I was maybe two or three positions, but with the same company. And I was also a medical recruiter for a while. That was just a job that had reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I needed a job, so I did it. But it did give me a lot of communication skills, and it made me realize I wanted to go back to school. So while I was working that job, I applied to a bunch of fully funded master's programs, and that's where I am now.
Oh, thanks. Um, so now that we've gotten a sense of, what your path, can you talk about what a typical day is like in your job? I mean, maybe they're atypical, maybe a typical week. Maybe that's a better thing to talk about. But Max, what about you? I mean, what does your job kind of look like on the ground? What sort of things do you do?
So I work in a rental office, much like you'd see on any street, where essentially my job is essentially with my team, and I'm one of the cogs. I have I'm a branch manager, and I'm one of the team that manages the office. We run the whole business, so from everything from back end, counting costs, personnel costs, all that stuff, to literally conducting the business. So renting vehicles, checking in cars, making sure they're maintained properly. Pretty much just running a small 170 car, rent a car business and everything that goes along with that.
Okay. Okay, cool. Kat.
Yeah, so I think when I started in comms, I was like, oh, I don't want to do PR and I don't want to do advertising. And that's all I thought that communications was. But everything I do is internal communications for the most part. And so I support employee and executive comms. And so, basically there's 3 engineering senior vice presidents, and every email that goes out for them, every speaking engagement they do, every presentation they put on, and even their social media. There's a comms person behind the scenes helping write that messaging, helping drive that narrative. And so for me, that's what I do for our engineering leaders. And then on the opposite side of it, anytime that there's an employee communications campaign, so if there's a big change happening, if there's just good news that we want to share, because our engineers do a lot of really, really cool things. Anything like that, that's all stuff that I would help put together the comms plan for, help develop all of the materials, write everything for, and then help roll out. So days look a little bit different, but I think that's a good quick summary of what it could entail.
Excellent. Thanks. Kyle, what about you?
So for me, I usually wear a couple of different hats a day. For the most part, I'll be handling maintenance for all the internal portals that we have for the University of New Haven. And then there's also, teaching people how to use certain software. We're actually in the middle of holding a couple of focus groups right now for a new restructuring of the current site that we have. But then there's also holding meetings with the different campuses that we have, because we also are located in Italy as well. So we'll occasionally reach out with them and check on a couple of things doing it. And that's either meetings at 8 in the morning or 2 in the morning. So it usually bounces back and forth, but they're wonderful people to work with every single time. Uh, but every day brings something new. It depends on how well the computers want to behave with us.
Yeah. Do you have a computer science background, Kyle?
Not at all.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
A
Safia,
lot of it.
what do you do? Talk about your
So
teaching.
I'd say I either am on campus 2 or 3 times for the week. So last semester I had everything all in the same day. So I would teach 2 classes in the morning and then I would have my graduate class in the afternoon. This semester it's a little more spread out. So like today I would have had a class right after this and tomorrow I teach. So that's pretty much my day to day. It kind of varies. But for our program, we do have to teach 2 sections. When we start, we teach first year composition, but next semester I'll be teaching form and technique of fiction.
Oh,
And each class that we teach is twice a week, but I will be teaching an online class next semester. And then
oh,
we have to take 3 graduate level courses.
great. Excellent. Um, thanks. So, what are some of the things you like about your current job? Max, what about you?
So we talk to people all the time. I love talking to people. I'm super loud and extroverted. So I've like when I worked in my role in sales for the company in East Hartford, I didn't like it as much because I was spending more time in the office on the phone than out talking to people. And I don't think I could work anywhere where I'm not talking to people all the time, like in person, chatting with people, going outside. Just it's. I think I need that personal interaction and like meeting people new all the time. Um, that's that's what I love about it. I mean, you can manage a business anywhere in any industry, but you want to be one where you can talk to people, at least in my opinion.
Okay, good. I'm hearing some conversation in the background, so I'm not sure if the folks who are attending want to mute themselves. That might be a good idea. We will have time for questions later. So, Kat, what about you?
I think for me, I like partially working in the aerospace industry. So I didn't really know anything about it before I took the job. But for me, it's been really cool to say, so Collins Aerospace, which is one of our businesses, makes everything on the airplane except the engine and the outside of it. And to be able to actually be part of telling the story about stuff like that or cool technology is very, very cool to me. I think the role that I play is to help break down those complex topics and to make them digestible for all employees to understand and get excited about. And so I love that. We work with some brilliant, brilliant technical people who can't always tell their own stories. And so I think that's one of the parts of the job that I like the most.
Excellent. Kyle, what about you?
Um, for me, it might be a little bit cliche, but there's a lot of puzzles I work with every single day, and they're all different calibers. It's always important for me to figure out the best way to get stuff done, not only for my own wellness, but for the sake of the community and everything with it. So I always really take a lot of pride in knowing that I can break apart all of these elements and work with them in ways that people can keep moving forward and always get the support that they need on there. And of course, all these puzzles can be different sizes. You'll have like very small ones or something that could be a multiple day project that's supposed to get done in like 2 hours, and it's just trying to get through something like that as efficiently as possible without too much stress, of course. But
Yeah,
it's great attending them every single time.
yeah, that doesn't sound like a cliche at all. That sounds very cool. Safia, what about your situation? Do you like?
So what I really like is that they kind of just threw us into it. The minute we came, my first day that I had graduate classes for the first time, I also had to teach freshmen for the
Ah,
first time. Yeah, they didn't give us like a week or anything to figure everything out. We just were kind of learning as we were teaching the students. But you never fully know something until you can teach it to someone else. So it's really become such a great experience to firsthand be a professor. Like the students don't see me any different than a professor with a PhD. To them, sometimes they call me Dr. Palmer, and I have to correct them like I don't have a doctorate yet. So it's really nice like connecting with all of them, watching them grow as writers, and also being able to work on my own writing in my classes. But yeah.
excellent. Thank you. Okay, so now here is in the middle of things, the kind of $1 million question. In what ways do you see yourself using what you learned as an English major at Eastern in your work? Max,
Well, um,
just
we
take as long as you need.
Well, it really all comes down to communications. The whole kind of takeaway from the Eastern English degree for me, not the whole, I guess, but a lot of it was communication, rhetoric, persuasion. I have to talk to a lot of people every day and try to convince them to buy stuff from me. And you have to know how to properly communicate and understand what people are saying to you, both verbal and nonverbal cues, and be able to process that quickly and create a response. And the arguments and analysis that we do when we work at Eastern in the English department train your brain to be able to do that stuff. You might not be studying selling someone damage waiver on a rental at Eastern, but you're studying how to properly structure an argument and take cues that people have given you or needs or wants from an argument and apply them to what you think. And I do that every day, and my brain was trained to do that by the practice that I got when I was at Eastern. It felt like second nature. The content is different, but the actual structure of it is very similar to what we actually do when we're studying rhetorical analysis and making an argument, especially in the capstone projects and things like that.
Cool, thank you. Kat, what about you?
Yeah, I think probably the number one thing is being a good writer. It is not a skill that everybody has and is so important in all of my work. And it's not just, yes, I do write articles and, features and emails and things like that, but it's also just being able to articulate your ideas and your thoughts clearly. So writing is such a huge deal, and everybody, all of the professors at Eastern, I just had such a good experience when it comes to writing. I also think just being able to read stuff and discern meaning from it. Like I said, my job deals with a lot of really technical material, so being able to read that and get meaning from it, but also ask clarifying questions and understand how to approach people to get that clarity, and just and I think Max said this too about talking to people, and maybe that's not an all English major thing, but I also think we have a unique ability to really connect with others, and that has been just immensely useful in everything that I've done. So
Excellent, thanks. Kyle, what about you?
Yeah, I would especially like to add on to that as well. I think also too, one of the big components is always trying to understand your audience, not in terms of a way to convince them or just to prove your point is correct, but how to reach out and help them understand what you're working on with. I usually have to go on campus a lot to meet with students and share about all these things that are going on, not for the sake of this is going to happen whether you like it or not, but because how can this benefit you as a student and later down the road as well? And I think especially throughout the English degree, you'll have these instances where you need to keep always having other people in mind. It's not just about you. These are tools that we build to help everyone who interacts with it.
Great, thanks. Safia.
Yeah, so my major, of course, was directly correlated with my current position as a graduate assistant. And it definitely helped a lot, especially with applying to the programs in the first place, was I did have to turn in writing samples. So it was good that I had already taken some workshop classes and craft classes at Eastern. So I had poetry and I had fiction that I turned in at my classes at Eastern, and those were the works that got me into this program. So that's how it kind of just directly correlated, but also, like everyone else was saying, the communication aspect and being able to teach a class, my internships and TAing that I did at Eastern definitely helped with that.
Great, excellent. So besides being an English major, what other experiences did you have in your time when you were doing your degree, that you think maybe helped you prepare you for what you're doing now? Max.
I think that we do, as a department, a lot of networking within the department itself. And I feel like talking to people about their career experiences, and also maybe not even in the English department, just as Eastern as a whole, we hold a lot of events where we, talk to each other, and networking and having that confidence to talk to other people about their experiences and things like that is something you have to be able to do once you get to your career. I hate to say, repeat this old adage, but it's rung true that it's more about who you know than who you are sometimes in the business world. And, getting yourself out there is super important. So making the effort to like go out and to these events that we have in the department will get you in with people, especially if you're talking to alumni and things like that, who, not me, because I can't offer anybody that much, but I'm not there yet. I'm not the owner, but you can build that network, and it's going to be very beneficial to you when you get into your career.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks. Kat, what about you?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. So one, I would say, I guess this is kind of goes over into advice too, but I was part of Sigma Tau Delta, and then I also just was like active in the English department, which I know goes with being an English major. But
Sure.
I think like taking opportunities to connect with professors, learn more about their background, understand different paths, I think is probably like what I would suggest, and what I think is something important to do. The role that I'm in, and the job that I took when I was in college wasn't like an English role, right? They weren't necessarily looking for English majors, but in my opinion, the English degree is so versatile and so useful in so many different fields. So I think um, looking at other opportunities, understanding from those in the English department, like what path they took to get here. I remember having a conversation with some of the professors, like, should I go to grad school and get my, PhD in English, or should I? And so I just think that, it goes along with what Max said about like networking, but I think I would just say, understanding that there are multiple paths out there, and maybe learning a little bit about what those paths could be.
Okay, good. Safia, how about you?
Um, so for me, Eastern definitely did have a lot of ways to get involved. I was president of African Club when I went here, so that gave me a lot of things to do, a lot of paperwork, a lot of events to plan, and those are the kind of things that I do enjoy, which also did help me become a professor at my school now. And within the English department as well, I did a couple internships. I worked with the newsletter, and I worked on the poetry journals, so we had to edit those. And there was just a lot to do at Eastern, and I did everything I possibly could. So I got really used to having a pretty full and diverse schedule.
Yeah, you're also a visual artist, and I
Yes.
remember you did a really nice cover for Eastern Exposure one year. I
Yeah,
think
thank
it was,
you.
yeah, it was cool. Kyle, what about you?
So I was also a member of Sigma Tau Delta, as well as one of the e-board members. And then I also had some experience as a teacher's assistant and at the writing center, but also just being involved with the community. So going to a lot of clubs and everything. And something that really mattered a lot was the idea of having respect for the Eastern community. And I'm just there for people beyond it as well, because you can learn just so much from any walk of life. And it really helps you look at yourself and see where you're going, what you've done and everything. And where you might need to change as well too. I think it's really important during your time here and beyond. Give people chances and see what you can learn upon from that. You might learn something else that you may never have thought before.
Hmm. That's great, thank you. Um, Now, with the exception of changing your major to something other than English, and you've all talked about how helpful it was, if you could go back to your time at Eastern, would you do anything differently to better prepare you for your post-graduation job search and career? So kind of hindsight being 2020. Max, what about you?
Definitely. I never went to any of the career fairs or anything like that, of which I know there are many. And I think that would have been super helpful because there are plenty of companies who want to hire people who are in college. And you go there and talk to them, and that's your networking right there. You get business cards, you put your name out there, and that's an easy street to get a pretty good paying job the day you walk out with your degree. So I probably would have done that. I was lucky enough to, get a job as I walked out of Eastern. But if you are at all like worried about that, like, oh, what am I going to do to make money when I'm done with school? Go to the career fair. There are plenty of people who want to use your skills, which they know you have because you went to this excellent school and are attaining your degree. And you'll be able to find work in any industry. If you know, because for me, I was, as I said before, I'm all about cars, so I wanted to be in the auto industry, and I did. But you know, if you have something that you like, I'll get into it later, but I recommend you do that, do something you like. But go to the career fair because there's a lot of opportunity out there.
Great. Thanks, Kat.
I think for me, so and I mentioned this in one of the earlier questions, when I started out at Eastern, I was double majoring in English and Spanish, and I dropped Spanish to take on comms as my second major because I thought it was what I had to do if I was working at comms role. And I wish I had kept Spanish as a double major because I am certainly not fluent in it now. And I think that knowing all other languages is exceedingly helpful, especially when you're in a role that relies on written and verbal communication for a global company. So,
Safia, how about you?
So I possibly would have double majored. I ended up graduating a semester early just because I either could have doubled or finished early. I just didn't know what to do at the time. But once I graduated, I realized that if I kept either a business degree or like a communications degree, it would have really went with the kinds of jobs that I was applying to at the time. And I would have also probably done more internships, whether outside of Eastern or just more catered towards business kind of internships. Most of what I did was more editing related, and I realized I don't really want to go into that.
Kyle.
All right, so this might kind of be a bit of a cheap answer, but I don't really know if I would because, back then a lot, I was always trying to talk with a lot of my professors and reach out with everybody.
Mhm.
I was always upfront about what was going on and things, which I would say right now, if you're not doing that, take the time now to communicate with everybody in the field and try and see and learn about these other things as well. Um, Believe it or not, there's still always time to change with what's going on top of it. I know like the last semester, I was in a lot of professors' rooms talking about not just the future, but just current steps in the process right now, what's going on, because you almost have to build a map and you don't have a lot of time. But if you take that chance to listen to other people, you can figure out the key points of where you need to go to on there. So maybe I'd say something a little bit along the lines of that.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thanks. So the next question, and this is kind of I don't know, I'm not sure how much I like this question, but because it's kind of a job interview question that I always disliked. But where do you think you see your career path leading you next? Like, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years from now? You know, what would you like to be doing? Max.
I think that I'd like to be at a natural progression from where I am right now. Having worked for the company I work for right now, I see myself working there for probably at least the next 5 years, if not more, just because I'm happy with the way that the structure of the company is and my upward mobility. So I'd like to just be doing what I'm doing now, but on a higher scale. Essentially, the company that I work for, you essentially just ascend the rank as a manager and oversee more businesses. You work at one branch, and if you become an area manager, you overwatch 5 branches, and then from there you look at 30. You essentially just ascend because if you like the business, you just keep doing it, but you extrapolate. You go layers, you zoom out a little bit, and you manage more people, more cars, more branches, more everything. And if I continue to like it like I am, I'd like to keep doing that because it can be fruitful, to commit to the same industry for a while if it's, if you're happy with it.
Great, thanks, Kat.
yeah, I think I lead a team now, and I really like being a people leader, and so I'd like to continue to grow that, going forward. I think in 5 years, I hope to maybe be doing something different than engineering and technology. I'm part of what is our employee engagement communications team, so it's really focused on those internal communications, and that's really the stuff that I like. It's the internal, it's the connecting with employees, it's the, attracting and retaining talent, comms world of things. So I think I just, hope to be sort of more of a leader and strategic visionary in that space at our company, and to continue to sort of grow in the current role that I'm in.
Okay, great. Thanks. Safia, how about you?
So 5 years time, I would have graduated from this program. My program is 3 years, so I finished in 2026. I still haven't decided if I want to go straight into a PhD after that, but I know that is something I do want to eventually pursue. But in the meantime, I do want to kind of go more into the fashion industry, working with fashion magazines as a creative director. So after like during my program here, I'm currently looking for internships that'll help me get into that field of work.
Oh, nice. Thanks. Kyle, how about you?
Well, based on my scatterplot resume, I'm not entirely sure where I'll be, but it would be great to try other departments here. I've really wanted to branch out at the marketing department a bit more, something that's more in line with the experience I've had, of course. I still love IT and everything with it, but it would be nice to try other areas as well. And of course, yeah, maybe even more personal writing. It would be great if I could make money for that, but we won't make that guarantee just yet.
Yeah, I know where you're coming from. Okay, so my last question, and then we'll have time for questions from the audience. So what advice would you give to a current English major who's going to be graduating soon? Like maybe next year, and doesn't have a clue about what they want to do, where to start, how to focus their job search. What would you say? What kind of, with your benefit of hindsight, what kind of advice might you give? Max?
My advice, I kind of went into it earlier about the career fair and everything,
Yeah.
but my advice would be don't stress about it as much as because it's not like you're going to graduate and there's a lot of talk out there about, oh, I can't find a job, it's really hard. There are a lot of jobs out there, but if you can't find something that you are at, because not everybody finds their dream job the second they walk out of college. Unfortunately, that's the reality. And not saying you won't, but for the 80% out there that might not, you can find work and continue to pursue your passion and make good money after college. I wouldn't worry too much about striking the dream job immediately because if you do and you get down to the wire, you might be like, wow, what am I going to do? I'm freaking out, and you put a lot of undue stress on yourself. So I think that you owe it to yourself to take a deep breath. You've come this far. You've done a lot of good work. Um, Try to figure out what you're passionate about. But in the meantime, you might be able to find something that you may not have expected, and you might end up liking it too. Don't marry yourself to one idea of your dream job, because if you do, you might end up putting all your eggs in one basket and then realizing that you might have wanted to try something else too. So keep an open mind, but don't stress too much about it. Just make connections, network, go to the career fairs, and it will work out.
Excellent. Thanks. Kat.
Yeah, I think I would just say, and I've touched on this too, is, don't just limit yourself to what you think might be traditionally English major roles. I don't know exactly what that even means anymore, but I would just say to like have an open mind. In my company has a pretty large comms team, but I can tell you so many of them were English majors only. Creative writing, we even had a psych major person in there. So I think there's a lot of non-direct paths to get to different roles, and that sometimes your thinking might be, oh, there's only these three jobs that I can do, and I don't know what role or what path to take, or how am I going to get a job. And so I would just say, think about the actual skills that come with being an English major. Use that to help guide your job search, or as you're looking at new things. And definitely echo what Max said about, you could be in a role and realize that you like things that you didn't know that you liked. And then I would just say, lean on the Eastern Network. I can't speak for all of the alumni on this panel, but I would be like so happy if somebody from Eastern reached out to me and was like, hey, I saw this role. Like, can we talk about it? Whatever. I have a lot of love for Eastern. So, and I think there's a lot of people that feel that way. So, definitely network and reach out to folks who might have connections as well.
Great. Thanks. Safia, how about you?
Yeah, to add on to that, I'd say definitely do a lot of research and talk to a lot of people. Like the program that I'm in right now, I didn't know that there were fully funded programs that would pay you to go to school and cover your tuition. I found out about it from talking to my friend who is an engineering major, and she got into a fully funded engineering PhD program. So then I started looking into ones for creative writing, and they do have fully funded PhDs. But I decided to do the MFA one instead, which you can still actually teach with the MFA even without a PhD. You just don't get as good, jobs right off the bat, but it's still a good start. And I wouldn't have known that if I didn't actually talk to someone and kind of, see where they were going and see what path she was going down, because it wasn't a path that I was considering at all.
Excellent, thanks. Kyle.
One of the major things, of course, is I'm sure as you're job hunting right now, you're seeing all the experience requirements on every position, where even for like an entry-level copywriting position, it's like you got to have 7 years for this. Now, that doesn't mean you only have to restrict yourself to just getting exactly 7 years of copywriting experience. You can learn in other fields as well and branch it back into that, which personally, I think that's almost the easier route to go with versus chasing these jobs you're just not going to get. Take it from someone who's been chasing publishing companies for 4 years, all out of state and everything with it there to finally get into one, and it didn't even last that long. Always keep an open eye and see the qualities in the jobs that you like and want to versus exactly what the job title says.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so those are all of the planned questions that I have. We have time for questions from you all who are here watching. If you have a question, you can either, raise your hand down where it says reactions at the bottom of the screen. You do the hand raise, or I don't know that I can see all of you. I think I can. So that would be, or you can just holler something out. That would be fine too. Just make sure you're unmuted. So any questions? I have a couple, but I'm going to wait and see if other people do. Dr. Ferrucci.
Steve would have been okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah.
First of all, thank you all for doing this. It's been really great to kind of listen to what you've done. I guess the question I have is maybe mostly for Kyle and Kat, but Max and Savai, you can jump in too if it seems relevant. But Kyle and Kat, you both, it sounds like, are in fields that you didn't actually study at all when you were at Eastern, right? So aeronautics. I don't know, Kat, if you took some advanced aeronautics courses on the side. And Kyle, I know you probably had some background in IT just because of the class I had you in, but can you talk about the learning curve that or the ways in which you have to navigate that whole new sort of discourse community, and the ways in which hopefully the English major kind of helped you do that?
Yeah. Kyle, do you want to go first? Do you want me to go
I was just about to offer you the same.
Oh,
So
okay. I'll start and then I'll kick it over to you. Yeah. So I'm not an engineer. So and I don't pretend to be. And so yeah, I think, I'm doing comms at the company, but there still requires a learning or a knowledge of the stuff that I'm talking about. And I think that um, for me, the biggest thing with the English major was I just feel like I came better equipped on how to ask the right questions, how to understand the audiences that I was dealing with, how to be able to navigate the writing for those audiences. Like, I consider English to be a field of research, a field of learning, a field of taking that learning and creating narratives and messaging and stories, and that's really what we're doing. And so I think for me, it's very technical, but being able to take technical content, ask the right questions of the right people, understand how to distill into what actually matters from this, and then be able to sort of take those complex topics, distill down to that messaging, and tell a story that resonates with the whole employee population is not something that I really could have done without having that English background.
Excellent. Kyle.
So I would say the biggest thing that helped me a lot was honesty. The reason I got hired at the University of New Haven was not because of any technical experience I had, but with management and handling projects. Back in 2019, I was with Medtronic, and it was to be a part of this big initiative for all the manufacturing plants around the planet. I think, what is it, like 131, organizing, keeping track on them, reaching out, all these crazy things you had to do. And my supervisor's like, that's what I liked a lot about you, was that somehow you got thrown into the deepest pit and you managed to swim a lot in there. And then also that I was just willing to learn new things as well. It's better to always, when you're applying for jobs or, even talking at job fairs, just to share what you've done and what you can accomplish. Don't focus on the negatives for doing it there, because even when I was hired during the interview with my supervisor, I told him I have absolutely no coding experience and I failed that class back when I was in college. And he said, all right, we'll teach you that later on and everything worth it. You actually know how to deal with people. I need you like now, kind of thing.
Okay. Um, I'm not sure. I think that might be the dean who's joining now. Thank you. Any other questions? Well, I have one. One of the things that we've been hearing over the years, and it's not just our department, but other departments throughout the university, is that um, it, Eastern students struggle with interviewing um, in various ways. And so I wondered, what would you say, if you were, counseling someone in the department on how to prepare for an interview, um, what do you think would be important for them to know? Max, can you give any insight into that?
Sure. Yeah, I had to go through 3 rounds of interviews to get my current job, so I've been there a little bit. Um, Interviewing is all um, your. It really comes down to confidence, which is hard because it's kind of a cop out because you learn confidence through experience, and you can either get that at Eastern or you can shy away from it. It's kind of something that needs to be self-nurtured. The more you put yourself out there, the more confident you're going to be the next time you do it. So going to those social events, talking to people, being the first one to raise your hand and opening your mouth in class and stuff like that, that elevates that confidence level, because you don't always have to have the right answer. But if you can confidently explain your position on whatever they ask you, I mean, I've gotten hired in jobs where I've been asked a question and I've honestly answered the question in the interview. It was like, well, I don't really know exactly how to answer that because I didn't experience that one thing that you may have asked me about yet in my role. And the person goes, fair enough, and we move on. But if you're, it's just like you have to have a rhythmic confidence about you, and you gain that just through experience of talking to people. You have to be, and it kind of goes to one of those things that's hard to learn, but it's an unspoken art, the art of talking to other people in confidence, and it all just comes down to putting yourself out there and not being afraid to you know ask questions, and then just that's how you get ready for it.
Excellent. Thank you. Kat.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to add to that, so Max kind of touched on it. One, don't be afraid to take a pause when somebody asks a question either. I think we all think we have to answer right away, but you can take time and think about it. Something that has always really helped me is, I think it's the STAR method, which is where you do like, which if look it up, but it's a big interviewing method, and it's like you have to do the situation, the task at hand, and like how you acted, and then what the results were. And that's a really good way to tell your story, and often answers those behavioral questions that you're going to get. So definitely recommend that. Look that up. It's a huge help for interviews. And then I practice with like mentors that I have, and I take it seriously, and I have them ask me questions, and I walk through my scenarios, because the other thing is you don't want to go into an interview and be reading off of a paper and just, okay, let me say this situation word for word. And so the more comfortable you can get with talking about your experience, bragging a little bit about what you did well, the better off that you can be. And I found that for that, it was mentors a little bit better than friends and family to run through that with. So
I have one more thing to add too, if you're done, Kat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, Obviously, the first interview is going to be your first interview. It's going to be harder than the rest. But I will tell you that working at Enterprise, I have mandatory interview prep before roles with management, like my current managers to go into the. So it's not like you're not going to be totally left in the at least in the company that I work for. They want you to do well. It's not like, oh, you apply for a role, an internal role, and good luck. Your managers, and I think that this is probably pretty indicative of corporate America now. Not that all of you are going to work in a corporate job, but it's they care about it, and you will get interview prep throughout your career. You might not get the job the first time you apply and do an interview, but there's a pretty structured system, at least in where I work, where they're prepping you for interviews, and you're going to get. And I thought the star thing was only an enterprise thing, so I'm glad it's not, because I used that in my last interview. But yeah, that's there. It's not knowing how to answer the weird scripted questions you get in interviews, which is not really true anymore. I don't think I got asked any of those "where do you see yourself in 5 years" type questions in interviews. It's more specific to the roles that you do and how you problem solve. I've been asked many times in interviews, like, what's a situation where you were challenged and might not have known what to do, and how did you figure it out? Stuff like that. That's what you're going to have to face. So having in your brain specific examples of how you overcome adversity or solved complex situations successfully is how you're going to get into it. And you'll just get better as time goes on.
Great, thanks. Safia, I don't know. I mean, you've interviewed for jobs, right? I mean, even though you're in school right now, what would you say?
Yeah, so honestly, I'd say the hardest part of the job application process is getting the interview in the first place. So when you do land an interview, you have to go in with the confidence of, out of everybody's paper applications, they looked at some words on a paper and they wanted to meet me in person and they wanted to speak to me. And when you get to that place and they're asking you questions, you think of it as a conversation. You think of it as getting to know this person and getting to know this company. And when you go in with that kind of confidence, the interview kind of turns into okay, how can we convince this, person to take this job rather than you trying to convince them to hire you. And when you go in with that mindset, they can kind of feel that confidence. And the questions start to be a little more personal rather than just like, oh, what skill sets do you have? Because if they brought you for the interview, they know you have enough skills for them to even meet you in the first place. So like they said, it really does come down to confidence and thinking of it in that way.
Great, thanks. Kyle.
So I don't want to say daily affirmations, but I do believe that believing in yourself a lot is a major component because you've made it this far. I'm going to presume that everybody is about to graduate within a month and you've accomplished a lot doing it there. So it's important to understand that these are all the things that you've learned so far and that you can continue doing that as well with this job. Let the people that you're interviewing know, and also let them know your willingness to expand upon that. What are some problems that they're facing? What are some things that you might need to try that you don't immediately have experience or want to do, but want to dabble in as well, because, that's what it means to be a member of the team. It's always just being direct and honest and upfront with them. And I would say do a little bit of research on the companies as well, just to see what they've accomplished. Because that's also a major, major way to earn respect in these interviews.
Great, thank you. So are there any other questions from the floor? From the virtual floor? Okay. Well, just before.
Well, I have,
Oh,
sorry.
Allison, Dr. Okay, well, Dr. Spicer and then
Oh.
Dr. Karuchi. Yeah.
Hi. So I was thinking about how a lot of you all said, like, you had professors and mentors you talked to, and I always feel a little bit at sea doing that with students because I can talk like logically about K-12 and I can talk logically about the job I do now, and pretty much no other job have I had that you would want to have after college, unless you'd like to be a bakery clerk, which I was in college. And so, like, how do I be helpful when I've never been there? Right? What did professors do that you found useful?
Yeah. I'm going to start with someone else. Safia.
Um, I'd say what helped with me when I was applying to the graduate programs, I had already graduated, so I kind of waited a year in between. So my advisor at the time, Dr. Garcia, she was really helpful with helping me research and kind of asking me questions. So even if she wasn't in a particular position that I was in or didn't, do a particular job that I was applying to, she knew the kinds of questions to ask me to help me figure out what it was that I wanted and what direction I wanted to go in. And she helped me find some resources and helped keep me on track. So I would say that was the biggest thing.
Great. Kyle, what would you say?
I'd say what helped a lot for me was that these are people who really care about how much you're growing as a student, everything with it, and that there's never, at least for my time at Eastern, I never felt like I was on eggshells with these professors, that I could always talk to them about these things, ask them questions, and work together with everybody in there. We were all trying our best every single day, and it was just great to have people like that at Eastern.
Excellent. Max, what would you say?
I obviously work in a little bit different industry than like we had talked about when we worked at school, but I feel like a lot of my professors gave me a lot of good feedback while I was at school that helped me cater my like hone in my skills when it comes to confidence and arguments and stuff like that. When I worked on my capstone, when I worked on all kinds of different projects where we're making arguments, all that stuff. Like, because honestly, truthfully, I haven't done a lot of connection after school aside for stuff like this, like alumni and, other things like that. But I feel like the connections that I made with professors helped me chisel out my type of confidence and my type of personality by talking one-on-one, going to meetings after classes and stuff like that to find my voice. Because, you got to have your own voice when it comes to things. When it comes to interviews, when it comes to talking to customers, you never want to sound scripted. So finding your voice is something that I think that a lot of the professors helped me do at Eastern.
That's great. Thanks. Kat, how about you?
Yeah, I think it was one, hearing a little bit about paths. So I don't think I knew 100% what I wanted to do, even as I had this role that I've ended up doing now. And so, hearing from different professors about, okay, well, this is the path that I took, and this is what it took to get there, and here's kind of the pitfalls, or here's the really good parts of it, or here's what you need to know. So I think a little bit of that. I also think it was just being supportive of, hey, I have this idea for this paper I want to write on this crazy topic, and I think I'm really interested in it. And how do we get there? I think that it was a little bit of just opportunities. So I got to TA for two different professors. And one of them, I wasn't sure if I wanted to teach. They were like, teach a couple classes, like by all means, and really gave me that opening. Dr. Spicer, I got to do some writing for you and your website and do like research and writing and figure out if that's what I like to do. So I think it's also just helping folks, maybe if they're like, well, these are the things I like. Any thoughts on how we can maybe flex that or grow that, or try something different? I think is really helpful too. I remember when I entered into the English major, I just didn't know how many paths there were. I was like, okay, I know I could be a teacher, but I don't know if there's other stuff out there, and I don't know if teaching is the thing I want to do. And I know you're all teachers, so I do recognize that. But I think you have a good sense, though, of what the value is of having an English major, and like all of the things that you've learned along the way that could be helpful for us.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question, and I think Steve had you have your hand up?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to ask Safia how she found being at the front of the classroom and teaching, and how that was going for you. I remember my first day of teaching, and they threw us in without any preparation too. And I forgot even to introduce myself on that first day. So I was just curious.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. We did have like a 1, 2 day orientation over the summer, but that was about it. But what did help was while we were teaching the classes, we also took like a practicum class that would kind of go over what was to come. throughout the curriculum. And right now, for what we're teaching next semester, we're taking another practicum class of like how to build our own curriculum, because we have to actually make this one, like make all the lessons versus first year composition. It was kind of already made for us. So that's why it wasn't as bad, you know, just showing up the first day, like, hi, I'm your teacher. And, you know, so we got to see it ahead of time a bit, and it was already made for us. So it was just a matter of kind of making it our own, getting used to the students and making sure that they got used to us. Because I'd have some classes that were really quiet and they never spoke, and other classes where students knew each other, so they talked more. So it was just a lot to adjust to all together, but it's getting easier as it goes by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing more special than that first day of teaching, as I recall. Well, listen, I wanted to thank you all for coming and giving us your time. It's really, I think it's going to be on our website. It's a YouTube video. I think that this is a really helpful conversation to have, and I learned a lot about what you guys learned in at Eastern. Um, so thank you so much, and good luck with everything. And I know you'll do well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Congratulations.
Great to see you all again. Thank you.
Yes.
See you too.
Thank you, Yang.
Yeah.